All right, so today I wanted to talk about this quote I seen from Toby Cunningham, who's actually quoting Michael Malice, I believe. But anyway, he says, the reason government employees are so disproportionately vile is that the state authority attracts low status, low quality people who are now in a position to demand the respect and deference that they would never be able to earn otherwise. Now, the first thing that you always have to mention when you bring this kind of stuff up is that obviously, there is exceptions to the rule. Again, but when we're talking about this kind of stuff, we're simply talking about the averages. Like I say, obviously there's exceptions to the rule. People would say, "Oh, I know a really good guy who's in government." Well, yeah, of course there's some of them, but we're simply talking about averages, right? Because this is the problem of the state these days, is that it gives people disproportionate power that is largely unchecked and unjust, and I think that's a big problem. Um, but I think that there's very good points in here, in that these are people who otherwise wouldn't be able to get that respect, and deference that they otherwise, these people wouldn't be able to get that in the private sector, right? They're people that are, they're very, not very, but largely egotistical, narcissistic kind of people. And I mean, you look at the classic examples like the Clintons of the world. Justin Trudeau, I think, is another good example. These kind of people. And I mean, those are very large examples, but you look at the smaller examples. I mean, look at a lot of these city councilors and stuff too. Like, these are people that, not all of them, like I say, not all of them, a lot of them are good people, but I'm simply talking about the averages here, and that they're people that they're power hungry people. Power hungry people. Like, are they, is there some of them that are, they're doing it out of the goodness of their own heart? Absolutely. But on average, that's definitely not the case. And I mean, the way that the way that that is that things wouldn't be so largely stagnant these days if it wasn't, right. Things wouldn't be so stagnant. Um, you know, so many of these people wouldn't be going along with the lockdowns and all this kind of stuff. Dude, this is another reason why, is that you have so many of these people that are supporting the lockdowns, right? So many of these people that are supporting the lockdowns, but yet are they following the rules themselves? No. And I think that is one of the epitome of these government people, is that they love that, power, and, being able to be a hypocrite and never get called on it, right? They're the kind of people that, I mean, you look at all these people. They're the ones that want the lockdowns, but yet, and the mask mandates and all this stuff, but yet they're going out for supper with their friends with, no social distancing, no mask mandates, none of it, right? They're the kind of people that just love that stuff. They just love that stuff. Um, so again, it's something that should be talked about more. But again, like I say, that is the big problem of the setup. So again, I think a lot of people would probably be wondering, how can we fix the problem? Well, how can we fix the problem? Well, again, it needs to be a lot more decentralized. Number one, I mean, the amount of people in government is far too much. It's far too much. There shouldn't be nearly as many people in government, and the ones who are, there needs to be more checks and balances. There needs to be more of an incentive to do the right thing. I mean, you take this whole lockdown situation, for example. Um, like I pointed out in past videos, what negative repercussions do these people face if they implement lockdowns and it doesn't do anything? That's the question that needs to be asked. Like, what negative repercussions do they face? And it's nothing. Like, some people would say, oh, they can get voted out. Well, again, you look at Cuomo. He had, New York was one of the, probably the hardest hit area in the world, but yet his approval rating went up. So this idea that, oh, if the governments do the wrong thing, they're going to get voted out. Well, no, they're not, right? Like, I mean, you look at the government, this time around, like when it comes to this whole virus situation, right? Like, the solution would, when it comes to dealing with this whole situation, there's kind of two ways of going about it. There's shut everything down and run massive deficits, or there's not shut everything down and not run massive deficits. But this is the thing. This goes back to, dealing with the poor and stuff. If you're a government and your solution to dealing with the poor isn't just give them endless amounts of free money, you're going to get voted out, even though the right thing to do isn't to do that. So again, this idea, oh, you're going to get voted out if you do the wrong thing. No, if anything, it's the exact opposite, right? If anything, it's the exact opposite. So I think that's a stupid argument. I think that's a really stupid argument. So the point being is that the government has, when it comes to this whole virus situation or a lot of these other situations, the government has no incentive to do the right thing. The government has every incentive to do the quick fix thing. The quick fix thing when it comes to this whole virus situation is to lock down and give people the guise that the whole virus is just going to go away. The problem with that is that number one, there doesn't seem to be very clear data that lockdowns, in fact, there is no data, at least no clear data. People would say, oh, Australia, but yet that's a very misleading example. And not to mention, too, they don't bring up the fact that there's far more areas that have had lockdowns and not had it do anything than the other way around. So that's the big problem. Like, that's the big problem. Again, so when it comes to the whole lockdown situation, is that for this problem to be fixed, government, there needs to be some reason for them to do the right thing, because again, if the government locks down, and the cases don't, nothing happens to the cases, like has happened the first time around and like is happening this time around, um, if they face no negative repercussions, then the entire system is completely backwards, in that the government has every incentive to not do the right thing, because the only way that you can have an incentive to do the right thing is if there's a negative incentive if you do the wrong thing, right? Like, and people would say, oh yeah, that's the case, but again, no, we just went over that, right? Because if there was, where are these governments that are losing their jobs? Where are these doctors that are losing their jobs for recommending lockdowns and it doing nothing? Where is it? It's not happening, right? It's not happening. So the problem with government is that the people in government have every incentive to simply just listen to the mob, no matter whether or not the mob is right or not, right? If the mob wants to lynch people, government goes along with it, right? That's what they did in the past, right? If the mob wants to lock everything down, regardless of whether or not it's going to work, the government's going to go along with it. If the mob wants everyone to wear masks, even though there's no data that shows that it makes a big difference, they're gonna go along with it. That's just how society works, right? And that's not how it should work, but for the time being, that's how it works. And this is bringing it back to the whole point here, is that the thing that makes it even worse, right? Like, the thing that makes it even worse is that government has, when you're in government, there's this horrible incentive to not do the right thing. And to make things worse, um, it attracts the worst people. It attracts the worst people. And that, I've talked to a lot of people who are very, calm, level headed. They're not even that outspoken when it comes to their political beliefs. I mean, some of them are, but most of them aren't. But yet you'll talk about this kind of stuff with them, and they always bring up, oh no, I would never want to get into government. I would never want to get into government, because they know about this kind of stuff, right? That the problem is that the most reasonable people are the ones that are the most vilified when they're in government. The ones that are the least vilified when they're in government are the ones that will just say yes to whatever the mob wants, right? They'll just say yes to whatever the mob wants, right? I mean, you look at Justin Trudeau. Do you think he actually believes a lot of the stuff he says, or he just says it because he knows it's going to make him popular, right? Do you think he's really a full-on social justice warrior? Like, of course not. I mean, he was, accused, and there seems to be, a decent amount of evidence pointing towards the fact, considering that the evidence has been largely, covered up, and then he groped someone back in the day. I mean, blackface, we know that happened, right? So again, like, do you actually think that he's a social justice warrior? Like, of course not. But he knows that that's just, music to the ears of his base. So he says it. And again, that is the big problem. Like, that is the big problem, is that the entire system is completely backwards. So, you know, that's basically a good way of putting it. Like I say, the reason government employees are so disproportionately vile is that the state authority attracts low status, low quality people who are now in a position to demand the respect and deference that they would never otherwise be able to earn otherwise. And again, this is the big problem too. This term state authority, right? People don't realize just how much power and authority comes with being in these positions of government. People don't realize just how much that is. And I think it would be very easy to say that, oh, if I was in that position, I would be able to, you know, temper that urge. But I don't know if that would be the case. I don't know if that would be the case. And that's why the only solution is to make things a lot more decentralized. There shouldn't be, enough power in the hands of a very small amount of people that you can literally dictate to people whether or not they can leave their house, whether or not they can get together with their family for Christmas. Nobody should have that much power. And if someone does have that much power, then that is pretty much a de facto dictator. And again, this is one of the many endless contradictions of the left, is that they're so worried about dictators and fascism and all this stuff they like to claim to be against. But yet, on the flip side, they could care less that, Jason Kenney, which is, the worst guy in the world, maybe aside from Trump in these people's mind, they could care less that he just implemented a policy saying, you literally can't even go visit your family members for Christmas. You can't even, I mean, we're within an inch away of being, you can't leave your house without the government's permission. Do they care about that fascism? Well, no, they don't, right? No, they don't. But, if he doesn't want, 70-80% marginal taxes on the rich, if he doesn't want to, tax corporations out of existence, then that makes him a fascist, right? That makes him a fascist. But if he wants to, tell people whether or not they can leave their house and not allow them to see their family and their friends, even on Christmas, that doesn't make him a dictator again. So it's just these massive contradictions that I just can't stand about these people. It really knows no bounds. Um, so anyway, that's what I wanted to talk about today. Like I said, I think it's a very good way of putting it. I've seen this quote, and I think it's one of the best ways you put it. Like I think it's one of the best ways you can put it. And again, like I said, I kind of brought it up, but people probably are asking, okay, well, what's the solution to this problem? Well, like I said, the solution is very simple. I mean, there isn't a perfect solution to it. And this is another reason why this kind of stuff gets so out of control, is that whenever someone's, points out a better way of doing things or a potential better way of doing things, the response of the zealots and the zombies is, oh, well, it's not a perfect solution, so we can't do it, right? But that's not how society works. That's not how society should work. That's not how it worked in the past. And this is why things are so stagnant these days, is that someone points out a potential solution, because it's not the perfect solution, then we just, completely gloss over it. And I think that's a massive problem. That's a massive problem. That the solution here is very clear, in that the government needs to be a lot more decentralized. It needs to be a lot more decentralized. As far as the exact details going into that go, I don't know exactly. I really don't. But again, the one thing that I do know is that government needs to be a lot more decentralized. So anyway, um, that's what I wanted to bring up today. I could talk a lot more about this, but I'm gonna leave it there. So if you liked the video, make sure you hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure you check out those links below. Make sure you follow me on those other platforms. If you want to donate, you can do that as well. Again, I appreciate whatever support I can get. Um, so like I say, check out those links, follow me. Have a good day, and stay tuned for more.